All right, hello everyone. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and this is my third attempt at uh, doing this taping. Let me just tell you very quickly what happened. Uh, the machine that I have is an older machine. It's 5 or 6 years old. I've got a new one that I'm going to transition to hopefully over the winter break. But until I do, I'm using this one because it works and it's got all my stuff in it. That's the good news. The bad news is it occasionally just decides to reboot on its own, and it did that twice. It did it last week when I first tried to do this lecture on Chapter 11. It just did it about 10 minutes ago. So I'm hoping it doesn't happen again. That's the first thing. It reminds me very much of my situation at home in that I have Charter for my cable provider, and occasionally when I'm turning the channels, it'll just stick on a certain channel and nothing will happen. I can't do anything. So I have to unplug it, wait for about 30 seconds to a minute, and plug it back in. Then it has to reset itself, which takes 5 minutes. And it's not that that is terrible, but it's just such a waste. So we had a technician come over, and he said, well, that kind of stuff happens. He was there for 2 hours and basically didn't solve any problem that we have. So I'm hoping that now the third time's a charm and I can keep going here. So I'm going to right now go in and try to redo Chapter 11 in our Murox jQuery and JavaScript and jQuery book. And Chapter 11, as you can see, is how to use jQuery plugins and jQueryUI widgets. This is probably the shortest chapter in the book, so I don't envision this lecture taking that long. As it says here, the easiest way to add common features like accordions, tabs, and carousels is to use jQuery plugins and jQueryUI widgets. In this chapter, you'll learn how to do that. Well, let's start by going over to the jQuery UI right here, which is at jQueryUI.com. And I'm over here at effect. If you remember when we took the test, we had a thing where we did the bounce effect. So under effects, I just grabbed one, and what the heck, I just grabbed the bounce. And notice when I run it, you can see exactly what happens here. All right. And you can view the source, and there's a lot of setup and stuff, but basically the line that runs this is right here. Now, there actually is a lot of setup in this, and there's a lot I think you probably don't need. So what I did was I went out to and Googled jQuery shake effect example, and I found this on tutorialspoint.com, which is a terrific site. They've got tutorials on just about everything. Then I grabbed this and at least tried to put it in here, but I guess that's when the machine blew up. So let's try that again. So I'm just going to grab all of this code that you see right here. I'm going to copy it to the clipboard. This is what it should look like when I get done, and I should be able to shake it like that. So let's see if that indeed happens. All right, and I may have even saved it. I don't know if it's saved correctly or not, but it does not look like it did because I was saving it as shake.html, and that's when the machine blew up. It says it already exists. Do I want, yeah, I'll overwrite it. Okay, I don't see it there, but fine. There it is. So I run this. Sorry, they're doing the floor behind me. Click the button. Oh, I don't know what that does. How about shake? There you go. You can see that the shake works. And if I go back and look at the code, all of the jQuery, all of it for this whole program is right here. And really, other than the document ready, it's these 3 lines. So we're telling it that we want the target, which in this case is the target is set up as that square that you saw in there. The effect, it should shake 4 times over a 1-second period. All right, so if we look at it one last time, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? And that's it. Now, there is, it said here, going back, come on, that we wanted to talk also about plugins. Okay? And that's a widget. What's the difference between a widget and a plugin? In my humble opinion, not much. But I'm going to type in here jQuery plugins. And you'll notice that the first thing that will come up is the jQuery plugin registry, which is at plugins.jQuery.com. And these are free built-in plugins. There are in the neighborhood of a couple thousand of them right here. All right? And you can grab these and you can bring them into your programs. Now, most of them come with also with CSS files. Some may come with image files, etc., and you are expected to load all of them in order to get it to work. But it's free stuff. In addition, if I come over here, you'll notice here's a learnjQuery.com. There's a plugin learning center. I don't even know what that is, but some talk on plugins, how to use them, etc. All right. And even more so, if I kept going, 50 most useful jQuery plugins. Plugins, there are free ones out there that are not in the registry. There are ones that you can pay for that are not in the registry. All right. So you can go take a look at those. And one of the ones that I've wanted to quickly show you, because it's really nicely set up, but the documentation isn't what I'd call the greatest. And that is, I'm going to type in here jQuery validation plugin. All right, and it comes up with jQuery validation plugin right there. That's what I want, jQueryvalidation.org. All right, yeah, I don't know why it goes through all this stuff, but it does. All right, so here it is. And it comes with this, I think it's about 13 minutes, 12 minutes and 56 seconds long video that comes with it. That's really well done. All right, here's the download, etc. And I don't want to spend much time on it, but I just do want to show you something. So I'm going to cut the sound from this, but I am going to play this. And I want to show you what they show you in here. They first show you a very simplistic example, and then a more detailed example. So let's very quickly look at this. So here's the simple example. Notice name must be at least 2 characters, email and they're both required, an optional URL, and a comment. So you click and you enter nothing, and notice what you get. No message for the URL because it's optional, but the other one that comes with the generic error message, this field is required. So you come in there, and you'll notice here everything that is required we've now put in. And if you submit it, you just get a message that says form submitted. You can put anything you want in there when you do that. But now when we look, and notice we put in 3 letters, so that meets the criteria. Then we put in an invalid email and an invalid URL. So you can see we get now specific messages. Not that it's required, but that it's out of whack, so to speak. And if we go back here and we make this less than 2 characters, now we get this. So it's set up quite simplistically. When you take a look at this, they explain to you how this is set up. All right, again, it's over 13 minutes, but it's really well done. All right, the actual documentation that comes with this isn't stellar in my opinion, good or bad. All right, and then they have another example in here as well. So here they show you the code that they put in there. Then they've got a more detailed example. All right, and I'm not going to go through this one at all, but it's much the same thing, except that in here you'll notice that they also have a password and a confirm password. Okay, so here they've got user error messages that have been customized. Okay, and this field is required, etc. Please accept the policy. And if you check here, good. But if you check here that you'd like to receive the newsletter, it opens up something where you get three options, and you must choose 2 of them. Okay, so you can see they're going through this, and they are setting it up where they're putting in information. The username is automatically created for you. It's the first name plus a period plus the last name. Okay, and you can change that if you want to. But notice they're now putting in everything in here, and when they click here and they say you'd like to receive the newsletter, boom, now you've got to choose at least 2 of these. And if you only choose one, error message. All right, and if you do choose them both, it goes through. Now that's all I'm going to say about that. All right, again, it's under jQueryvalidation.org, and I think it's really worth your time to take a quick look at it. It's a very convenient way, for lack of better words, for you to do form validation. All right, so let's just jump into this. We got an introduction to jQuery plugins, 3 of the most popular plugins. So they talk about Lightbox, BX Slider, and Cycle 2. They introduce you to the jQueryUI, which I've already shown you, and 5 of the most popular jQueryUI widgets. All right, and I've shown you, some of those already that are in there, all right, in the past. But again, if I do go back to jQueryUI, which I probably closed now, but that's okay. You'll notice that I already showed you that effect, but if I go to accordion, Now, the way that this is set up right now, one of these is always open. That might not be what you want, or it might be what you want. But again, the great part of this is look at the simplicity of this. This is all the code. That is all the jQuery that is in there, other than adding jQuery and jQueryUI. That is all of it. Basically, it's saying take the ID that's accordion, which is this whole thing right here, and run an accordion on it. So you've got an H3 and a div, an H3 and a div, etc. So it's all set up like that, very similarly to the way we set it up for the test. All right, let's jump into the chapter then. In this chapter, you learn how to find and use jQuery plugins. A plugin, in here they say, is a jQuery application that does just one web task or a series of related web tasks. It's kind of like a customized function or routine. In an ideal world, it will do exactly one thing and only one thing, but it is possible that it can do more than one thing, depending on who wrote it and how they set it up. As it says, a plugin makes use of the jQuery library, and most can be used even if you don't know much or anything about JavaScript or jQuery. But you do have to use them in the way that they're supposed to be used. All right. So it says here that this figure 11.1 starts with a screen capture that shows the results of a search for the jQuery rotator plugin. Usually if you put jQuery, some name with plugin, one of the first things that will come up here is plugins.jQuery.com. All right, and that's what they're telling you right here. Not that you have to do that, but it's an easy way to look for things. It says another way to find the plugin you're looking for is to go to the URL for the websites that are in the table. I already showed you the plugin registry, and they show you a couple more as well. So when you look right here, these are some of the ones that you'd probably be interested in going to. All right. Here are some popular plugins. In fact, they're going to talk about at least the Lightbox in here in this chapter. And notice it's for displaying images, here for slideshows. Again, I don't think it's a terrible idea, especially when you're learning, to go and take a look at what's out there and what's provided for you by default. And I don't know how Mr. Gudmested does this or Mr. Smith, but for example, what I typically do when I'm showing people how to use Bootstrap is we go out to getbootstrap.com, we grab the starter template, then we go in and we grab, for example, the nav bar, make whatever changes to it we want to make, and let's say we're just going to do a simple form. Then I grab the form and again modify it. All right. Typically what you get with that is you get a nice setup, and it should be responsive from the get-go. All right, so as it says, jQuery plugins are JavaScript applications that extend the functionality of jQuery. They use the jQuery core library that are available for almost anything. So before you go out and try to reinvent the wheel, you should always go out and search and see if you want some kind of a plugin if one already exists. And again, not all of them, but many of them are free. And there are people who also sell them, and it might be something that if you know, you graduate and you've got an affinity for this, that you might want to do something like that where you create plugins and sell them. All right. In general, it says if you can find the plugin for doing what you want, it's usually better than writing the code yourself. The plugin's been tested. Now, you know, I've said this kind of thing in class before, and so it shouldn't be any surprise. But if, for example, there's a plugin out there and I've got two plugins that are similar, and one has been downloaded, let's say, 1,000,000 times, and one has been downloaded 10 times, you can tell which one is probably the better plugin. All right. So the next figure, as it says, shows how to use any plugin after you find the one you want. First, and most people don't do this, unfortunately, especially people who don't know that much about jQuery. It says study the documentation, so you know what HTML and CSS it requires and what it allows you to do. Usually it says you'll evaluate the plugin to see if it's what you want. So rather than just downloading it blindly, all right, do some reading. Do a little bit of pre-work to see if indeed it's what you want. Second, it says you usually download the files for the plugin and save them on your web server. This download, as I mentioned, is often in the form of a zip file, and it always will include at least one JavaScript file, but I said this to you before, it may include a CSS folder, a CSS file, several files, image folder, image files, etc. The download may also include two versions of the main JavaScript file. All right, and it might be that one of them may be minified, all right, or one of them may be available just from a CDN, a content delivery network. You are typically not going to want to, even if you could, you don't want to modify somebody else's plugin. All right. Next, as it says, if a plugin requires one or more CSS files, you code the link elements for them in the head element. Then you typically will code the script elements for the JavaScript files. In other words, there's a pecking order in the way that you put this stuff in. All right. So if you are using Bootstrap, for example, you might put your Bootstrap CSS in first, then the plugin CSS, then your own CSS files type of thing. All right. Usually, as it says, only one JavaScript file is required, but some plugins may require additional JavaScript files. Fourth, as it says, if the download includes a folder for images, you need to make sure that the folder has the right structural relationship. If they tell you to call it images, you call it images, not IMG, for example. At this point, it says you're ready to do the plugin, so you code the HTML and the CSS for the plugin. And sixth, as it says, you code the jQuery for the plugin, which quite often is going to be very little code. So the example that follows here, it says, shows the elements that the plugin requires. All right. It says this is, before you continue, note the second caution in this figure, which is some plugins won't work with the latest version of jQuery. All right. Some are older or whatever. So here is the game plan, so to speak, for doing this. I'm not going to read this to you. All right. It's pretty much the same stuff that we've just talked about. So you'll notice in here we've got jQuery, then we've got the plugin, all right, the HTML, and this is just a partial version, and then the jQuery for using it. All right. Finally, as it says, make sure that you include a script element for jQuery and make sure the script element for the plugin comes after the one for jQuery, because these plugins will all depend upon jQuery to work. All right, we already talked about using the latest version. Sometimes that's not a good thing. Some plugins can be accessed via CDN, but most must be downloaded and saved to your server. And the reason for that is, again, most of them include external files like CSS files, image files, etc. So first one they show in here is the lightbox, and most people are familiar with this. With a lightbox, typically what you have is one or more thumbnails, and you click on the thumbnail and it gets, you get a bigger picture of the image. Right? Again, depending on what you're trying to do, that can be a really nice feature. And it can be another feature that you don't have to put a lot of work into it, all right, if you use the plugin. So you'll notice we've got the CSS file and the JavaScript file, and you'll notice, and I'm not sure if that's a mistake, I would have thought that we would have put our own CSS file after the plugin CSS, but maybe that is correct. I don't really remember. So the Lightbox plugin can be used to display larger versions for thumbnails. All right, I'll let you read that on your own. And the good news about this is our book shows examples of all this stuff, and you've got the code. All right. So here is a web page that uses the BX Slider plugin for a carousel. All right. Notice there's three things here, so you can click on any one here, or you can click here. So there's different ways to go forward, etc. As it says, it makes it fairly easy to develop a carousel. There are other ways to develop carousels as well. This is just an example that uses a plugin. All right, you can also always, of course, go in and create your own carousel where you've got more control over the look and feel, etc. And here's another one for slideshows. This is the Cycle 2 plugin. And again, they show you the Java, what you have to load for JavaScript, what you have to write for the HTML, etc. All right. Next, we get this introduction to the jQuery UI. I've already shown it to you. Now, notice what it says. It's a free open source JavaScript library that extends the use of the JavaScript library, but by providing higher level features with a minimum amount of code. Virtually every feature that you see in here, all of these, and I counted them once, I don't really care that much, to be honest with you, but it's 20 to 25 features. All right, so for instance, let's say that I want to use that menu. All right, might not be the greatest of menus, but you get the idea. All right, then I go to view source, and again, what you'll notice, this is the HTML to set up the menu, but the actual JavaScript to run the menu, or jQuery, okay, it's not very big. Okay, this sets up jQuery, this line 12, so basically everything that's in there is here. All right, and you'll find that with most of these. Now, when you go through this, excuse me, you can actually go and download the entire library. All right, so it says figure 11.6 shows the home page. I already showed it to you. That's the site where you can download jQueryUI. The quickest way to do that is to just click on the stable button in the quick downloads box on the right of the page. There's download right there. Not on the right any longer. All right. And you'll want, typically, as it says there, the most stable version. All right. Okay, so it's on the left now, not on the right. The figure also summarizes the 4 types of features that the jQuery UI provides: widgets, themes, interactions, okay, and effects. All right. So, as it says, the next figure shows how to build a custom jQuery UI download and download it to the computer. When you're learning how to use the UI, as it says, though, you don't just click the stable button. You can just click the stable button rather. Then you can experiment with the features. For production websites, it's better to build a custom download that includes only what you want. So again, if you choose the download, what they're saying there is you get every one of the features that's in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, like 30 to 32 features. I guess too early in the morning to be counting. But the point is, if all I want is a tabs capability, all right, like this, there really isn't a lot of sense in downloading everything. Then I'm better off just going over to the view source, grabbing the associated jQuery, and just plugging that into my program. All right, that's the disadvantage. All right, because you don't get everything. The advantages of doing a whole download is you do get everything. All right. As it says there, a jQuery UI download also includes the jQuery library in the external folder, an index file that displays a page demonstrating the features, and uncompressed versions of CSS and jQuery files. How to use it on your web page. All right, it says you use the link and the script elements that are shown in the figure. So let's look. So you're going to get something like this if you download all of it. So they give you this 4-step process here. From the home page, click the download link or a custom download if that's what you want. Select or deselect the interaction, so you can select everything or just what you want. If you want to select a theme, you can do that. It's also possible to create your own theme. All right, and you might even want to go look up things like theme rollers, where basically you can set up kind of customized themes, and you can do it even though it's customized, a lot of it is drag and drop type of thing, or you can even create your own by hand. After you select a theme or design a custom theme, click the download button. Okay? All right. And I believe that pretty much is it for the chapter. Nope. How to use any jQuery widget. Well, they show you the accordion, and they show you even the code that you have to put in and how small it is. So again, to use a jQuery widget, you code the HTML and the jQuery for the widget. In the jQuery, you code a selector, the method to be used, and the options. So there's the selector, there's the method to use, and there's the options. All right, and finally, how to use 5 of the most popular widgets. The accordion we've already looked at. And again, hopefully you saw the brevity of it all. Got a couple more options here, so you can use the mouse over, etc. The tabs I also showed you. Again, you have a limited amount of resource of real estate on your page. This could be a nice thing to have depending on what you're trying to do. And again, the idea is there's all the jQuery, not very much. The button and the dialog widgets. All right. Now this is a dialog. This is a modal dialog, meaning that you have to click the X before you can go on in here. There are other ways to create modal dialogues. For example, Bootstrap has got a very nice way to create modal dialogues as well. Finally, there's the date picker, which most of us have seen. All right, you put that onto a page. This would be a nice thing if you had some kind of a thing where people have to schedule appointments or whatever. And that is it. So I will come back, and tomorrow morning I'm going to come in and I'm going to redo chapter 12, which I went over with a class yesterday, but again, I did not have a working version of Camtasia. All right, I learned more about Camtasia by going on and using Google and YouTube than I did by having somebody from the Camtasia help desk try to help me with this. Okay, that's it, and I will see you in the chapter 12 lecture shortly.